I was reading the book of Romans, and I just was completely blown away by some of the stuff that I was reading, and I thought I might kind of go over some of it here, because it seems like to me there's a lot of confusion, even though it's very clearly outlined here, that salvation is by grace and not by anything that a person does, as far as performance, as far as these little things go that we often do, to try and put ourselves in better position with God. So comparing the law to grace, or the Old Covenant to the New Covenant, I think it's worth going into. This is chapter 3, verse 19. I'm going to start reading out of the book of Romans. It says, "Now we know that whatsoever things the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law shall no flesh be justified in his sight, for by the law is the knowledge of sin. But now the righteousness of God without the law is manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God, which is by faith of Jesus Christ upon all them that believe, for there is no difference," talking about Jews and Gentiles. "For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God, being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, who God hath set forth to be the propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness," the righteousness of Christ, "for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of God. To declare, I say, at this time his righteousness, that he might be just and the justifier of him which believes in Jesus." So he goes on to another verse later to say, "Therefore we conclude that a man is justified by faith without the deeds of the law." Okay, this is clearly written in the book of Romans, and you know what? I could go on, for a couple more. This whole book is really all about that, in Galatians as well. And it all talks about the same thing, is that a person is justified by believing in Jesus Christ alone, and not by anything that you or I do to put ourselves in better position with God. This reminds me, so many times I hear preachers talking about, you pay your tithe or God's going to curse you. That's not true. Okay, you're already blessed. If you're in Christ, you're blessed. Okay, and a person being justified by Jesus Christ, it's his righteousness. It's not your righteousness. You are a sinner, basically. But when you give your heart to Christ, or as they say in the church, you give your heart to Christ, or you come to faith in Christ by believing in what he did. Well, what did he do? Well, in church they say, well, Jesus died on the cross to make salvation available to you if you believe. That's kind of a weird way of saying it, because that's not really the whole matter. The whole matter is that Jesus Christ came to this earth, okay, born of a virgin, to fulfill the requirements of the Old Covenant. And if you don't understand what the requirements of the Old Covenant were, and why you can never fulfill it, then you're not going to really understand why even do we have a new covenant. Why did he have to come and do this? What was the end result? What kind of relationship do we have now based on the new covenant? Because that's where we are. We're a new covenant church. This is an old covenant idea of works. Because let's face it, the Jews had a couple hundred, maybe 600 or some 700 laws they had to continually do. And if you broke one, you're guilty of breaking them all. Or even if you just take the 10 Commandments, if you break one, you're guilty of breaking them all. And so here's the thing. Bottom line is this, that people are not righteous by doing things. Okay? You are righteous by what you believe. What you believe in is you believe in the finished work of Christ. Okay, that is his death, burial, resurrection. What he did was fulfill all the requirements of the Old Covenant. And he created a new covenant. In Hebrews it talks about this perfectly. I could probably turn over there quickly. He's talking about in Hebrews, 6, 7, 8, 9. "For if the first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for a second." There you go. Okay? Going a couple more verses down to verse 10 of chapter 8. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my laws in their mind, and I will write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. Okay? Verse 12, for I shall be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. A new covenant hath he made with, it says in verse 13, in that he saith the new covenant, he hath made the first old. Okay? Let's go to 10. For the law, having a shadow of good things to come, and not the very image of those things, can never with those sacrifices which they offered continually year after year to make the comers unto perfect. Okay, that just means that the old priests back in the day, the Jews, they had to offer these sacrifices of lambs, bulls, goats, and things like that, which really never took away sin. It was just kind of a pointing to Jesus. Hey, this is a shadow of something to come. And so these things never really were the real thing. Okay, so they had to do this every year. All right, so there was a reminder that a person was not yet right. Okay, so let's see. For then they would not have ceased to be offered if they were basically going to take away sin, because the worshippers once purged should have no more conscience of sin. It says. So if the blood of bulls and goats and things like that really worked, they wouldn't have a conscience of sin. So that means that now that Jesus did the perfect work, we should have no more conscience of sin. So sin is a done issue. It's handled. It's all been put on Christ. It's all been taken care of. We don't have to really become sin managers. No, we don't have to do that anymore. That's old covenant. Okay, God has already dealt with this. Okay, and it explains it in greater detail. But in those sacrifices there is a remembrance again of sin made every year. For it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sin. Wherefore when he cometh into the world, he saith, sacrifice and offering thou wouldest not. Okay, moving down. Verse 9 of chapter 10 of Hebrews. Then he said, Lo, I come to do thy will, O God. He taketh away the first, that he may establish the second. Talking about the covenant. By the which will we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. Did you get that? Once and for all? And every priest standeth daily ministering, talking about the priests of the old covenant. They stood and did their sacrifices, right?